Good evening, it being 6:31
Well,
on January
hang on
8th.
just a second.
Oh, okay,
We're just getting people into the room.
okay,
Sorry.
okay.
And we're looking out for Ruby. Because without her, we don't have quorum.
Or Peggy, right? If Peggy,
Or Peggy, yes.
I know Ruby said she may not be able to make it till 7 because of work commitments.
Okay, I don't see Peggy, so I will text her.
Welcome to the team.
I'm excited.
I'm going to have you introduce yourself in a little bit. We're waiting for one more person to make quorum.
Perfect.
We see her.
There's
Did I
Peggy.
miss her in the room?
There's Peggy.
Oh, yay.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Oh, Peggy.
So Joyce, if you would like to call the meeting to order, and then I would like to say a couple of things, and then we'll get to the agenda.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob.
Thank
It
you.
being 6:32, 6:33 on January 18th, 2023, I call the meeting of the Brockton Conservation Commission to order. It's being conducted remotely in accordance with the extension of the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20. Real-time public participation and comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. If you wish to comment during a public input portion of the hearing, please use the raise your hand function to be addressed at the appropriate time. For those of you joining by phone only, please press *9 to raise your hand. A copy of this recording will be posted on the city's web pages. All votes will be done via roll call to ensure count accuracy. Please note that discussion of all agenda items should be limited to 15 minutes each to ensure timely progress through the agenda. I will do the roll call attendance, Rob.
Please
Is that
do.
okay? Okay, so for roll call attendance, if each commissioner could please announce with your first and last name that you were here so we can verify quorum.
Laura Beekler, aye.
Peggy Curtis, I.
Joyce Voris, aye. So we have 3 out of 4 present, so quorum is met. Rob?
Yay. This is a very interesting meeting tonight. We're going to see some changes moving forward. Megan Shave, who has been our conservation agent and an incredible asset to the city, is going to be moving on to a new position with the state, to which we wish her well. I know she has served this commission incredibly well and runs a tight ship in getting reports out and site visits done. But while we'll be looking for a conservation agent, we have brought on Beta Group, who is and has been our house doctor for the last few years. And they are going to be doing the application review and the inspections and all the fun things that go along with that. So if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly, so people get to know you, and then we'll get to the agenda.
Awesome. My name is Elise Tripp from Beta Group. I am a wetland scientist with the team. And I'm just going to be kind of a fly on the wall tonight just to get a feel for the commission and how you guys like to operate so we can make it as smooth a transition as possible. And Megan, congratulations.
So it's going to be difficult going forward. Beta certainly has the technical expertise, but nobody does hand holding like Megan. She's really helped out phenomenally well. Commissioners, I will get in contact with you. We're going to be doing something for Megan on the 27th. So I'll let you all know about that shortly. So with that, we're off and running.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Okay, so the first, let's do the continuances first. There are 2 continuances, I believe, that were actually scheduled for this evening. It's item number 4, which is the notice of intent to erect a filling station on VA hospital property on Belmont Street. And item number 7, it's an enforcement order and notice of intent for New Heights Claremont Avenue, their project. So both of those have requested continuances until our next meeting on February 15th. So I'd entertain 2 individual motions, please, to continue those.
I make a motion to continue notice of intent, 42 Claremont Avenue to the February 15th meeting. And continue notice of intent for 940 Belmont Street, VA Hospital to the February 15th meeting.
Thank you. If anyone is present to speak to those 2 applicants, we'll see you in February. Thank you. Okay, the next will be commission matter number 1, which would be meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, do we have a second on the
Oh, I'm sorry.
continuance?
Okay,
Boy, she was fast.
of course. Motion's been made.
A second.
All in favor?
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Morris, aye. Motion passed. Okay. On to the meeting minutes. So we do have on the agenda motion to accept minutes from the December 7th and December 21st meetings. But those minutes I know were not in as of this afternoon. I did look just prior to coming in. I believe there might be one set of minutes, but we haven't had time to read them or to look through them in a way that would be necessary in order to accept them. So I would like to just also see if we couldn't get a motion to actually move that as well to the February 15th meeting.
I make a motion to move the reading of the December meeting minutes to the next meeting, February 15th.
Beekler, second.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. A vote on the motion, please.
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Morris, aye. So we will have a chance to read through those minutes and we can go back to those on the 15th of February. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of the agent, representative of the commission. Megan, did you have anything that you might want to address?
Sure. So just to give an explanation on why the commission should consider taking a formal vote to have our consultants at Beta Group serve as our representative or agent. As you've heard, they will be attending the meetings, doing the site visits, all of those things that I do in the capacity of the agent, but 2 specific other duties that the agent has power to do is to sign off specifically on enforcement orders or emergency certifications. So sometimes if there is an ongoing wetlands violation that needs immediate action or an emergency situation that requires emergency certification, those forms do allow for an agent of the commission to sign off in place of the individual commission members if they aren't available to react and then respond at an upcoming meeting. So this vote would just to formally recognize that the consultants at Beta Group, should they respond to an enforcement call or respond to a request for an emergency certification, they would be able to work with our office to issue those documents in the same way that I would have as agent.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions about that? Any questions or comments? Rob, any questions or comments or?
No, I
Okay.
just hope that you will move on this positively. Otherwise, the world shuts down.
At least the conservation world.
Yeah, well, that's,
Elise, do you have any comments at all or questions or?
No, not at this point. But thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I entertain a motion to appoint the commissioner's consultant as representative of the commission with authority to sign and act on behalf of the commission as permitted under the Wetland Protection Act and its regulations. I entertain a motion for that.
Curtis, second.
I need the motion.
Oh, you need a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you made the motion. I made the motion to accept Elise Tripp from the Beta Group as our agent until a new one can be found.
do we?
I'm
on
not
the
sure
motion-
that, pardon me?
On the motion? And I'll ask the more professionals. Should it be that the Beta Group is the agent as opposed to just
Yes.
Elise?
I believe it does say commissioner's consultant in case Elise is not available to do an emergency check or something.
Thank you.
Should we specify Beta Group or is it okay to leave it as the commission's consultant?
I think
As-
I would identify Beta Group.
Okay. So would you be able to make
I'll
that into a motion?
amend that motion. The motion is made to accept Beta Group as the commission's consultant for the time being.
Okay. Laura? Okay. Motion has been made and seconded to appoint Beta Group as commission's consultant, as representative of the commission, in order to act on behalf of the commission as permitted under the Wetlands Protection Act. That motion has been made and seconded. Could I have a vote, please?
Spiegler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. That motion passes. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. So 4 and 7 are done, the minutes. And we have our appointment. Okay. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is number 3, request for certification for compliance, Dunbar Street, Davis Commons. Megan, would you like to report on that?
Yes, so what I will do is I will promote Scott Faria from JK Holmgren Engineering because I think he'll be on the next item as well. So I'm going to promote him to panelist because we did receive a continuance request for this COC as well. But given that this has been an ongoing, there are outstanding issues on this that we have not received an update on recently. So I think the commission might want to discuss if it will be fruitful to continue to the next meeting or if we should consider tabling this again until we actually have an update to consider. So I have promoted Scott and hopefully if he has an update that he can give in support of a continuation, we can hear that. Otherwise, the commission, I think, would consider tabling this again.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mr. Faria, how are you?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, commission members. Scott Faria, Holmgren Engineering. Yes, the Dunbar Drive, the project, we filed a certificate of compliance. This is the second time we filed it. Each time Megan has had a few comments to address. I think we've got it narrowed down pretty well at this point, but we still need the contractor to go out there and take care of 2 items, and he just hasn't been able to get out there yet. I spoke to him last week. He was hoping to get out there the end of this week or beginning of next, in which case we should be able to at least come to the next commission's meeting and tell you folks that we've addressed everything that was in Megan's last review, and hopefully proceed with the certificate of compliance. That's at least what we hope, Madam Chair. I understand it's, it's been on a few agendas.
Hmm.
Luckily, with the certificate of compliance, from our point of view, there's no filing fee, so it's not the end of the world if you tell me you don't want to continue it again and we have to refile it. So obviously, it's up to you folks. Either way, I hope to have it done for the next meeting. So I will certainly leave it up to you folks to decide how to proceed.
Okay, thank you. On the list of remarks that Megan made on November 8th, are there any specific ones that are still outstanding, do you know?
The monitoring well needs to be installed in the main basin. That wasn't done. And I believe the only other item that needs to be done is there was some scouring, I believe, in the very first set, and I'm going off memory because I wasn't expecting to speak on this one tonight, so
Oh, okay.
I apologize. But I believe there was some scouring on the first sediment forebay that was going to be addressed.
Okay,
And I'm sure there was probably something else in there that I'm missing, so.
so the question really is, should it be tabled or should it be continued? Megan,
Yeah.
do you have anything that you would like to address?
So as Scott said, it doesn't change the filing that much. It's more just a matter of housekeeping. You know,
Mhm.
if there is an expectation that the commission's comments will be addressed at the next meeting, then certainly you can continue it to the next meeting. Tabling is usually if we've gone several months without any update.
Yeah.
So if the commission wants to give it 1 more month, continue to the February 15th meeting, you certainly can. But perhaps make a note of it at this meeting that you are expecting progress between now and the 15th of February. And if not, then that would be evidence that there is still work that needs to be done and it needs to be set aside until the applicant is ready to address it properly.
So I entertain a motion to continue this request for COC until the next meeting with forward momentum, if we're provided with additional information. So what,
Okay, I make a motion to continue 122 Dunbar Street to the February meeting, so they can complete the monitoring well and the other issues as stated by our agent, Megan.
motion has been made, second,
Second.
a vote, please.
Pickler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. So it will be continued till next month with the
Thank you.
understanding that those items will be addressed.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the next item on the agenda will be item number 5. It's a notice of intent, 76 Campanelli Industrial Drive, stormwater vegetation. Let's see. I believe this is a new notice of intent, right?
Correct.
So file number and a butter notification, have those been verified?
Yes, we received a butter notification and let me pull it up here.
Your January 10th letter, it did say that a file number was not assigned yet. Is that,
Yes, so as of my report, it had not been assigned, so let me
thank you.
double check if that has changed as of the opening here. Yes,
Yeah, I
so
have.
it has been
Okay,
since assigned its file number.
thank you. Good, thank you. So, Mr. Farrier,
All right, thank you, Madam
presentation.
Chair. Sure.
you.
Again, Scott Farrier, Holmgren Engineering. We have a notice of intent for a industrial building at 76 Campanelli Industrial Drive. It's Campanelli Industrial Drive is the kind of the through street between Oak Street and Westgate Mall. So this particular building, most of those buildings were built back in the 80s. And on our side of the road, the westerly side of the road, all of the properties that were built have a culvert across their driveways and I'll call it a drainage ditch or a drainage basin in front of all the properties. I think most of them, but ours in particular at this point was never maintained properly. When the current owners were going through their ownership documents, they were made aware that there was an order of conditions that was issued, a certificate of compliance as well, going back to the construction days, but from owning other properties, they understood that those basins were to receive routine maintenance. And right now it's pretty much a wooded basin. It's really thick in there, and it's obvious that no maintenance was ever done to the basin. So the current owners would like to get into to be able to maintain it, to start out by clearing the vegetation that's in the basin, and then do the semi-annual routine maintenance that you folks would typically expect us to do on a drainage facility. So we did receive a review from Megan. A couple of things we would like to amend just to go along with Megan's suggestions. As far as the existing trees go, we'd like to cut the trees, but not stump and grub them, just basically cut them at ground level. And then again, with the semi-annual maintenance, clearing of any of that brush that grows back, that'll control everything. There will be no work at all at ground level. So there'll be no excavation by machine, by hand, anything at all at ground level. Once they do that, once they clear all of the shrubs and the trees that have grown in there over the last 35 years, then they'll have a better idea of what the basin bottom looks like. If there is any erosion going on, any big ground, they would like to take care of that at that point, to seed it, to take care of that erosion. And also, the design plans called for riprap at the pipes entering and exiting the basin. And we can't tell. It's really hard to get into the bottom of the basin. We don't know if that riprap, in fact, was ever installed. So again, once they do all the clearing and the cleaning, if there is no riprap, we would like to install the riprap again in kind of in accordance with typical stormwater management guidelines, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Megan? If you could review your report, please.
Sure. So for this project, I think as we proceed, we're going to need to nail down the definitions of what this area actually is, at least as it's defined under the Wetlands Protection Act. So it's being described as a detention basin, and perhaps there's evidence to support that it was designed that way. As of what was presented with the NOI, I wasn't able to conclude that it is or was designed as a detention basin. It looks like a section of the drainage ditch that runs along Campanelli Industrial Boulevard, and it connects to the extension of the ditch that crosses the boundary of 132 Industrial Boulevard, which, as you recall, was before the commission about a year ago. And in that case, the commission considered that drainage ditch a stream because it was, a channelized waterway moving along a gradient that has existed prior to November 1996. So generally, under the regulations for a stormwater structure to be considered a stormwater structure and not a resource area, it needs to have been designed and approved under an order of conditions if necessary, and it needs to have been approved and installed after 1996. So Scott had mentioned that there was an order of conditions possibly for this drainage structure. If there is any information, for example, the file number that might have been associated, we can narrow down what information we might still have for that filing. Again, I'm assuming it's probably quite old based on aerial imagery. It looks like that drainage ditch was in its current location and similar condition as of 1996, which leads me to believe it was installed prior to then. In which case, if it does have an order of conditions, it may or may not still be filed in our office. Generally, we have a master list going back to the early 2000s, and then before then, it gets a little trickier. There are boxes basically in the attic that have some of the files any older than that. So certainly if the applicant or anyone has more information on that structure to show that it was designed and installed as a detention basin and can be therefore maintained as a detention basin, we would need to see that again, because based on what was submitted with the notice of intent, it appears to be a drainage ditch with a flowing water going through it that has existed prior to November 1996, which under the regulations would make it jurisdictional as a stream, meaning it has banks, it has, according to the wetland scientist who did the delineation, it looks like it has a bit of BVW directly up gradient of where the break is for the bank. So again, if it doesn't according to the regulations count as a drainage structure, it counts as a resource area, which means any work to it needs to meet the performance standards for those resource areas. So in this case, at minimum, we have bank and it looks like we have BVW, which means that any vegetation work, whether it's trimming, whether it's cutting to the ground, whether it is, installing riprap or turning this into a basin, then essentially we are proposing that within a resource area and it needs to meet the performance standards for that resource area. So again, I think the first step is if we can go back to the applicant and see if there's any more information that would support considering this a detention basin. But if there is no such information available, then I recommend the commission treat it as resource areas, bank, BVW, and not issue an order of conditions until the proposed work meets the performance standards for those resource areas.
Okay, thank you. I do have two questions. Mr. May,
Yes,
are you the
ma'am.
one that gets to go into the attic to find the old records?
No, that'd be Isaiah.
And number two, Dr. Schatz, with current things like climate change and additional stronger storms and more water flowing into systems, or just water changing direction as it flows into systems. I mean, obviously wetlands are pretty dynamic. Is it possible for like resource areas to develop? And then what happens to orders of condition that were in the past that then, well, gee, now it's a resource area? What would happen with that?
Right, so that's why the regulations have some of those checkpoints, so to speak, of when it's a stormwater structure or when it's a resource area. I think it has to do somewhat of like when the Mass DEP stormwater standards were enacted. That's why, you know, some of those checkpoints, so more recent drainage structures, say if a basin was installed today and it was approved through an order of conditions and it met the Mass DEP stormwater standards, it could be treated and maintained as a basin, you know, so whatever is in the operation is the maintenance plan. If it says to mow it several times a year and so on, you could do that. The thing is, under the regulations, any old drainage structure, so for example, what this drainage channel or ditch or basin, if maybe that's what it was designed for, we're not sure. But again, based on the aerial imagery, it is pretty old. It looks similar to how it did in 1996, which means it was probably installed before then if it has changed. If it was a basin, then I assume it was probably installed quite a bit before 1996, because it does not look like a basin in 1996 either.
Okay.
But either way, drainage structures that are from the 90s or older were not designed to meet Mass DEP standards. A lot of them, due to lack of maintenance, have turned into, or they develop wetland plants. The drainage patterns change, but just as a regulatory benchmark, all those old drainage structures can be considered jurisdictional, either as
Okay.
BVW or streams under the regulations.
Okay, thank you. And I suppose that if things were maintained the way they're supposed to be maintained, then perhaps they would do the job that they're supposed to do and maybe not change as much over time, perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, possibly if this was a basin that was installed in the early 90s or even the 80s and it was maintained, it might not have filled in or developed the vegetation. But again, it's one
Okay.
of those things with the regulations, because clearly it wasn't maintained and how old it is. Unless there's evidence otherwise, it's a stream and we need to treat it like a stream.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for helping our learning curve. Okay, so. Commissioners, comments, questions?
I don't have any.
I have a question. What brought this area to their attention in the first place? What instigated this whole thing?
Yeah, just from owning other properties and having to do routine maintenance on other properties. They looked at this and figured this was something they should be maintaining as well. So that's what's.
Thank you.
Mhm. Does it seem appropriate then that we allow Isaiah to go into the attic and then get some more information regarding exactly historically what in the time period? And then,
I may be able to help a little bit, Madam Chair.
yes, please.
My office did the site plan as it was for this one. I can't tell if it was 1982 or 1987. The date's
Oh,
very
really?
fuzzy. It was at least back in the 80s. I'm looking at the plan right now, but I'm not sure how many records we have, but I think I may be able to save Isaiah a trip, at least for tomorrow anyways, if I can do a little bit of legwork on that. And I can certainly reach out to Isaiah and Megan to let them know if I do find anything to save a trip.
Yes,
I'm
and I
sure
would
he thanks you.
recommend, yes, if we can find a file number, that would also be helpful, because again, we have a very old ledger.
Yep.
You know, but certainly if we know that there's an order of conditions with a file number, we can at least narrow down sort of what box it might be in and if that box is likely to be in the attic. But yes, if there is a file number associated with a plan, that would help us determine where we might go looking for it.
I will look.
Okay, so just to be absolutely sure, if that was prior to 1996, then it could be jurisdictional, is that correct? Or,
Yes,
Am I-
so unless there is follow-up associated with that order of conditions, just based on what we're hearing and the fact that we're talking about plans dated 82 or 87, I think it's probably safe to say that anything we find is going to be before 1996. which means it's going to be jurisdictional as a resource area at this point.
Understood.
Thank you. So we will take that forward to next month. Is that correct, Mr. Farrier?
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, any questions, any comments?
No.
Okay, I entertain a motion, please, to continue this case till February 15th. Campanelli Industrial Drive.
I make a motion to continue 76 Campanelli Industrial Drive to the next meeting, February 15th.
Motion's been made. Second, please. I think you're muted, Peggy. I do that all the
Curtis,
time.
second, sorry.
Motion's been made and seconded. A vote, please.
Peeler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Vora's aye. Mr. Farrier, we will see you on that one next month as well.
Very much. Thank you,
Thank
folks. Have a
you.
good night.
Good luck finding the documents.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was not too bad. Okay, number 5. Let's see. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for Father Kenny Way. It's an expansion of the senior center.
Let's move to continue that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Janice, I was trying to give Janice a fright.
We have a-
So, I see Janice here. I'm going to move her to panelist. And who is representing?
Pear
Oh,
Corporation.
Brad, there he is. And Jim Jackson.
So this is a new hearing, correct?
Yeah.
We have a file number and a butter notification. Do we have evidence of that?
Yes, we have both.
Okay, thank you. Not sure, eeny, meeny, miny, who would like to go first as far as applicants?
This is Brad McCord. I'm with Bargman Hendry. We're the architects for the project. As we've seen, we've got Janice and Jim with us, with me today. Just briefly, I'll give you a quick overview and then I'll hand it over to Jim to get to the meat of the conversation this evening. First off, thanks for having us today. We've been working on the expansion for the senior center for a few months now with Janice. The original building was built in 2000, so just about 23 years ago. It's currently about 8,000 square feet, and we're looking to put about a 4,000 square foot addition onto the building. Back in 2000, the addition was actually planned for, so the existing drawings that we had to start with actually identified this expansion. So there has been planning for this for quite some time. The 4,000 square feet addition takes up about 3,000 towards the parking area, the existing parking lot, about 1,000 square feet under the existing entry canopy, if people are familiar with what faces Father Kenny Way. And then we've got the solarium on the back side, on the south side of the building. We'll just, the footprint remains the same, but we built a new kitchen is relocated on that side. So the 4,000 square feet is really expanded services, program spaces to help Janice and her team meet the needs of the community and the seniors. It includes multi-purpose rooms, some social spaces, and a new kitchen that's expanded. And that's about it. New ventilation throughout. One other thing, after the building was built in 2000, there was a parking expansion in 2020, so just a couple of years ago. So our expansion of the building goes towards that new parking lot, but does not, but minimizes the disruption to that. that's a quick overview. I'll hand it over to Jim to get into the meat of our documents right now.
Okay, Mr. Jackson.
Muted. Good evening. My name is Jim Jackson. I'm a civil engineer with Power Corporation, and we're working with BHNA on the Senior Center project. I'm going to share my screen so we can see some other plans. Is that coming up all right?
It's really small,
Really small?
not good for my senior eyes.
Yes, adult size, please.
Is that coming up in size here?
Yeah, that's better.
It's
Okay.
getting there.
All right, yeah, just gonna do a kind of a quick overview of the resource area there. Reason we're here is Salisbury Brook is to the south of the property. And the portion that abuts the project is the concrete wall that retains the brook along here. And our surveyors picked that up, so that's an accurate location. And we also had our wetland scientists go to the site and confirm that that was actually the limits of the resource area, and they were able to do that. So the existing conditions, the parking lot here, it drains to a catch basin, which then goes back into Father Kenny Way road drainage system. The new parking area that Brad was just talking about is in this general area here. And some of that flows to the catch basin, and some of that flows to a bioretention area that was constructed with that 2020 project to expand the parking. And that bioretention is in this area right here. The main addition is this piece, right? This is the edge of the existing building, and the new addition is right in here with a more addition in front of the building here, and this small piece on the back in the footprint of the existing sunroom that is going to expand the kitchen. So what we have done to accommodate the new drainage that's from the addition, we're going to have more impervious area from that. So we're going to collect all the roof drains, which are clean runoff, and direct them into the bioretention area. And we will do an enlargement of that bioretention area to accommodate the increased flows from the addition. So we're able to reduce the peak flows off of the site, and not allow any untreated storm to reach the resource area.
Mhm.
This plan kind of shows it better. All the roof drains from the new additions picked up in this piping and directed to this expanded bioretention area here.
So that
yep.
so that the actual extension of the building was previously grassed, is that right?
Yes, yeah, it was it was left vacant because I think this was planned all along from what was it, 2000 when they originally built the building. They wanted to leave room for expansion, so it was a grassed landscape area. Yeah, so we did have to accommodate. We did have the increased flows from that, so that's why we brought that drainage through the bioretention area.
And how much larger will your retention basin be?
It's not significant. It's this footprint. This is kind of a footprint of it here. It's about this 101 at the bottom is probably about a 40-foot by 15-foot area, and the previous was probably about a 10 by 20. So we've increased it.
I have a question. I've been to the senior center and I've seen that retention area. Doesn't it have plants planted like blueberry bushes and things like that planted at the bottom of it?
It did have a couple of bushes. They didn't look all that healthy now this time of year, but we do have a landscape plan where we're going to improve that area.
But there'll still be vegetation at the bottom of the retention area?
The bioretention area itself will just be the bioretention soils, but we will have a bioretention seed plug mix on the side, and then we're adding shrubs around the bioretention area, as well as some trees on the other parts of the site.
And on the back of the building, they had two garden areas. Is that being removed, or is it being retained? Planters for.
Yeah, these two planters here.
Yes.
Brad, do you know if those will be retained?
Yeah, I think the intent is to relocate them. If we can, we've got a new sidewalk that serves the kitchen area here, and they'll probably have to be slid down south just slightly.
I know that the Boys and Girls Club comes and helps them plant flowers and herbs and things like that.
Yeah, so they're basically right on the edge of what will be the sidewalk. So I think they'll have to be displaced during construction and then reconstructed.
Mhm.
So the edge of that retention area is right up against the 25 foot, is that right? 25 feet away from the
Yeah, so
riverbank?
the 25 foot is this line here. So yeah, we're just a couple of feet off of it.
Yeah. Is there anyone else from your applicant pool that would like to speak? Ms. Fitzgerald, or
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners, and good evening, Mr. May. It's great to see you all. And let me first say thank you to Megan. We've worked on a previous project together, and you were so easy to work with, so helpful, and I wish you luck in the future. As Brad had mentioned, the building is getting a little old. It's 20+ years old. We haven't done any renovations or updates in that building. Our recent 2020 census has educated us that we've had an increase of over 3,400 older adults in the community. So certainly we need to have a senior center that can accommodate the increase in numbers. The expansion does improve our ability to serve the community and provide the programs and services to our older adults. I'm in support of this project, and I'm always available if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
so may I ask what your role is again?
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm the director.
The director of of the center. Thank you.
Yes, yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay, good. Thank you.
Did you have input into the design of the new building? Janet?
Yes, yep, I did.
Is it Mr. McCord that has control of the map?
It's myself.
Okay, could I just see, not the river side of the building, but the other side of the building? Is there any room to build out on that other side? Or
Up towards Father Kenny Way?
Yeah.
or,
where's the road limit?
this- Yeah, so there is, here's the curb line.
Oh.
We are building out in that direction somewhat.
Yeah.
And we're trying to re-landscape that area too to improve it.
Hmm.
If I can add to it, this is Brad McCord from Bargman Henry again. So our intent was trying to stay within the building footprint, again, staying underneath the canopy for our extension.
Mhm.
And minimize any kind of any more building towards Father Kenny Way. I will note that there's a memorial brick paver patio that we're maintaining. So that's, yes, right where Jim's got his cursor. And we're extending the sidewalk so you can access to that still. And then proposing a few new trees, as Jim had mentioned, kind of throughout the whole site as much as we can. Not a lot of green site on here, but we're trying to take advantage and put some more vegetation back on the corner.
Okay.
Is 4,000 square feet really enough to accommodate the 3,400 people that have the influx? It looks kind of small to me.
So what we've done, I'll speak to it and then I'll let Janice add. What we've done is we've tried to create as much flexibility in the space. So we've got the multi-purpose room, we've added about 1,000 square feet, but we've got it subdividable so that we can divide it into 3 different meeting groups or activity groups simultaneous. So I think that's a big plus right off. And then we're also trying to take advantage of some smaller social spaces, smaller social gathering spaces for those groups that don't need, they're just a small group, 2 or 3 people that can just meet and talk. So we've tried to take advantage of every square foot and make it as flexible as possible to serve a wide variety of needs.
And Madam Chair, by adding the additional multi-purpose rooms, if you're familiar with the senior center, a lot of times we have to turn people away when we have large events because we just can't accommodate. But by adding those, especially those 2 extra multi-purpose rooms, gives us more opportunity to have larger events, but also we can divide up those rooms to make smaller rooms. The center, as you walk in now and walk in and see the grand fireplace, that's a beautiful area, but it's non-functional for us.
Right.
We can't hold events, presentations, things. It really is wasted space. So by configuring that, relocating the kitchen, giving us the additional multi-purpose rooms, and just kind of repurposing some of these other rooms along with additional office space, which allows me to bring in additional staff. I think what the designer has come up with is really great use of what some may say is a small area. So we've looked at this, we've discussed it, the staff has looked at it, the board has looked at it, we've all reviewed it, and we think that what the designer has come up with is really a functional, nice space for the older adults in the community.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, a city the size of Brockton at 106,000 generally has a larger senior center than what we have, even with this extension. And we generally have more staff, but given that, the city is budget constrained, this addition is going to allow a lot more flexibility and usability for Janice and her staff, who do a marvelous job of taking care of the seniors in our city.
I've heard nothing but good things about the senior center, really. I haven't made it over there yet, although my age says I should, and I will. But thank you. Thanks, Mr. May.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
didn't mean anything by the smallness. I just figured, you need more. I've been to the senior center and it's wonderful. And I wanted to make sure that you have enough space to do all the things, the wonderful things that you do. And, after the extension, you don't want to outgrow it too quickly and then want more space. So that was the reasoning behind my asking that question.
Thank you, though.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Mr. May, is that the
Thank you.
only senior center that's in Brockton?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Wow. Wow.
Amazing what they do out of that space.
Mm.
And you're
Proceed
right,
with that.
Peggy. We should have a larger facility. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
budget wise, this is what we've got.
Thank you. I don't see Dr. Shave. Dr. Shave, are you there? for some reason you've dropped off my
Yes.
screen. Your report, do you have anything, I'd really like to hear what your report has to say? Your
Yeah,
summary?
so just to summarize what we're looking at for resource areas here. As was mentioned, we're looking at Salisbury Brook
Yeah.
to the south of the site here. So Salisbury Brook is channelized. It has a concrete bank, so to speak. So jurisdictionally speaking, the bank is basically at the channel. And so because of that, both the 25-foot riverfront and the 25-foot buffer zone to bank overlap due to the verticality of the bank itself.
Mhm.
So based on that, they're proposing the same limit of work that they used when they did the parking lot expansion about 2 years ago. So they are proposing a limit of work along that boundary. So it does keep them out of the 25-foot buffer and the 25-foot riverfront. Fortunately, as they explained, the area where they're doing the expansion is already their existing lawn and walkway area. So they shouldn't need to do any additional clearing within the remaining buffer zone. They should be doing the construction within the existing lawn area and then the expansion of the existing bioretention basin. So the bioretention basin, it's going to serve both as their stormwater storage for the additional runoff, and then also it's going to assist with the compensatory flood storage in the same way as when they expanded the parking lot. Part of this site is in the floodplain. So they did a cut and fill table to calculate how much of the floodplain needs to be filled, either due to grading or the construction of the building itself. And then they're proposing areas of cut or areas of lowering the site to make up for that fill. And some of that cut is going to be additional cut within the basin. So the basin, the same as it was before, it was oversized for flood storage and the parking lot. And now they're going to enlarge it again to oversize it to serve both as the stormwater basin and compensatory storage for the floodplain. So in this case, even though it's right up against the boundary of the 25-foot riverfront area, that tends to be the case when you're doing compensatory storage, because there needs to be connection at grade to the existing floodplain and to the waterway that the floodplain is associated with. So in this case, they would have to grade up to the limit of work anyway to make sure the riverside has connectivity to the basin. So based on that, my only comment had been that they needed to update their application to include those numbers of the fill and cut, because with the order of conditions, the commission does need to be specific in how much fill and how much compensatory storage they're permitting. So I did ask for those numbers from their cut and fill calculations, and they have provided that. So we can use those for the order of conditions form. In terms of the stormwater review, so this is subject to the Mass DEP stormwater standards. Because it is a City of Brockton project, I shared the plans with the city engineer so that he could take a look at the drainage. He only had one comment relevant to the drafting of the plans, which has been addressed. But other than that, he did not have any additional stormwater comments. So at this point on our side, we don't have any other plan revisions to suggest. I would just recommend for an order of conditions, in addition to our standard special conditions, some additional special conditions related to the certificate of compliance and the bioretention area. So again, because as we discussed, the retention area is going to be enlarged, it's going to need to be reseeded and replanted. So we'll want to follow up and make sure that those plantings are completed, because it will be sort of the closest area to the resource area. And with a bioretention area, you do like to see those plantings maintained because it is part of the functioning of a bioretention basin. So I'm recommending that a wetland scientist inspect the bioretention area after the completion of the initial planting and seeding, and then at the end of each growing season for 2 growing seasons following completion, and that a report will be submitted to the commission following each inspection. Next, that at minimum, the monitoring report following the completion of the initial plantings and seeding shall be submitted prior to issuance of a partial certificate of compliance, and that this monitoring report shall confirm the species and health of all of the shrub plantings, as well as confirm the seed mix used in the basin, and that stabilizing ground cover using this mix has been established at the time of the request. And then for a complete certificate of compliance, I recommend that the commission receive a final monitoring report confirming the plantings after 2 growing seasons, including the replacement of any dead or missing plants in those 2 years. And that shall be, again, submitted prior to issuance of a complete certificate of compliance. And finally, I'd recommend that at a minimum, a partial certificate of compliance shall be issued prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the building addition. So that way, the commission can be assured that the basin work is complete, because from our perspective, that's arguably the most important part, is the functioning of that basin, both for stormwater management and for compensatory flood storage.
Commissioners, any questions, any comments?
I don't have any.
My only, I guess, comment would be, we do usually request like a peer review for stormwater, and I know, Dr. Safe, you said that the city engineer took a look at the plans. Is there some way that he might be able to give us an actual document that would demonstrate how his evaluation is of what Para's done for their stormwater as a kind of a peer review? We do require it, right, for stormwater for other projects? Would we not need that for this?
So generally, yes, we send out applications to our peer reviewer, and as part of their scope and fee, they provide their comment letter in their format, as you're familiar with Beta Group. Providing, again, this is the practice prior to my starting as agent, is that for a municipal project, the city engineer will review it in place of having it sent out for peer review. Again, in terms of receiving the same sort of comment letter, we don't, or at least I haven't dictated, how the city engineer provides his comments versus, how Beta Group does as part of their scope and fee. Again, in this case, the city engineer had one drafting comment, which he provided. He did not suggest any design changes, but generally speaking, when projects go through tech review or site plan review, if the city engineer does have design comments, we see them written up, in a written form, not exactly the same as Beta Group, because obviously the template will vary based on the engineer. But in this case, the city engineer didn't have any comments besides the drafting one, which is why there isn't a report, so to speak. But again, I don't dictate sort of how the city engineer formats his comments versus how Beta Group does.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the formatting as much as he's looked at it, just to have a complete report, since I thought that was standard for stormwater management. But if you feel as though that's enough, I certainly defer.
Yes, and I mean, in this case also, this will be going before tech review and site plan review with the planning board. So the city engineer and DPW technically will be looking at it again through the
Mhm.
technical review process. So I
Mhm.
expect, if there are any additional comments as they relate to engineering, those would be provided to the technical review committee as well. But again, in this case, following protocol, the same when we went through the notice of intent for the parking lot expansion. Again, we did not send it out to Beta Group. The city engineer reviewed it. I believe he provided comments for the parking lot design at the time, and
Mhm.
then provided his final approval
Yeah.
prior to issuing the order of conditions for the
Okay.
parking
I
lot.
think it's the stamp of approval that I was looking for, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly, if the commission wanted, a special condition that you want something in writing from the city engineer, either following, I would recommend possibly, something following the tech review, approval.
Mhm.
That way, if the city engineer is looking at it twice, the commission can receive, the final written stamp of approval from the city engineer that would cover both boards.
I would certainly appreciate that, only because there will be some change in the way water is distributed across the site, and it is right at Salisbury.
Yeah, so then
I
I
would
would
appreciate
recommend you
that.
could, add an additional special condition that the commission is to receive a final report from the city engineer following completion of all review, following the completion of review under all relevant boards.
I'm just jotting that down. Thank you. From the city engineer. Okay, I feel very comfortable if we could add that as a special condition, that the city engineer final report would be included upon completion of all boards. That would be just dandy. Thank you. That's a good idea. Commissioners, any questions, any more comments, concerns?
No,
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded. Vote, please.
Biegler, aye.
Curtis, I.
And Vorath, aye.
Are we making a motion for a partial certificate of compliance?
Notice of intent. Hang on. Yes, please.
Okay, I make a motion for a partial certificate of compliance.
I think it's order of conditions, right? We have to issue an order of conditions first,
Oh,
right? And the compliance is after things have been done.
okay.
So we need a motion to issue the order of conditions with the special conditions, including one that requests a report from the city engineer.
Okay, I make a motion for special order of conditions and to include final report from the city engineer after all follow-up relevant boards have been made.
Second,
So the motion has been made and seconded to issue an order of conditions for Father Kenny Way for the senior center expansion with special conditions, including the final report from the city engineer after all boards have been evaluated. The motion has been made and seconded. A vote, please.
Biegler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Vorath, aye. Thank you very much. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have to get there soon. Let's see, I believe the last item on the agenda is a request for amended order of conditions, 455 Oak Street, parking lot and drainage improvements for the Fuller Craft Museum.
Okay, yes, so this is an amended order of conditions, so the file number is the same as the original order of conditions. We did receive certificate of mailing for the abutter re-notification as part of this
Thank you.
process.
Thank you. And now we have applicants present for presentation. Hi.
Yes, we should have Steve Ivis, the wetland scientist, and then Timothy Power and Steve Bernstein for the engineering.
Mr. Power, Mr. Ivis, who's first?
Mr. Ivis was going to start, but Steve, you are muted at the moment.
Right now, I'm trying to
There you
unmute. There we go.
Gotcha.
Oh, so
Good.
Madam Chair, just for clarification not that I have a vote on anything, but I do want everyone to know that I am the city's representative to the Fuller Craft Board. So I'll sit here not listening.
I think you can listen, you just can't talk.
Sure. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Shave, Director May, and Commissioners. My name is Steve Ivis, PWS. I'm here with Tim Power tonight, who's an engineer. I will start this, and then Tim Power will complete our discussion here. This project is a continuation of the parking lot repair, order number 118-0796 that was issued back in May of 22. The work for repair of a parking lot was done in fall of 22. It included a rain garden for stormwater off a isolated vegetated wetland and repaving of the parking areas on the site. In late November of 22, we discovered stormwater overflowing the isolated vegetated wetland, flooding and icing along the west entry drive and into the parking area south of the rain garden, which is southwest of the Fuller Museum. The water was entering the IVW from Oak Street drainage, stormwater drainage, and there's an adjacent large parking lot to the west of the IVW. We met out there on the 4th of December with Dr. Shave, and who saw the water emanating from the IVW flowing over the driveway to south of the rain garden. We were worried that it would become an icing hazard. So we asked Dr. Shave to allow us to relieve that icing hazard. There was some yard debris in between the IVW and the BVW that's adjacent to Upper Porter Pond, which is north of the Craft Museum. There were a lot of stones, yard debris, boulders that prevented flow from the IVW to a BVW, sorry about all the terms, north of the IVW, okay? So we suggested a trench be built from the IVW north to the BVW with an after-the-fact request for amendment of the order of conditions. The creation of a channel was completed on 12 December 22 with the removal of hundreds of boulders and stones. The water stopped moving on most days
into the rain garden at that time. Dr. Shave then issued a report and enforcement order on the 9th of January, which basically said we failed to stabilize the sides of the trench and some of the ground that was adjacent to the trench. I went looking for methods, and I spoke to the NRCS state soil scientist, Maggie Payne, who said to address the sedimentation inside the stream, wattles were an effective way to do that. And to address erosion in the wintertime, a tackifier might work. We found tackifier in a local Lowe's or Home Depot, and I will let Tim Power follow up. Tim, you have some graphics and some details.
I do. All right, can everyone see my screen here?
Mhm.
All right, so just to sort of follow up with some pictures on what Steve had mentioned. The area here in yellow is what we talked about. This is the overall site plan for the original notice of intent and what we submitted as an amended, to be amended. So in this area, and I have some pictures I can share of the parking lot. This is the area of the parking lot in dark gray that we regraded and pitched to go to our rain garden infiltration basin, which was here, which all seemed to work, was successful at the outset. And then we got some substantial rain, and the IBW, which is over here, started to fill up and overflow. Water was then flowing out in this direction onto our driveway and causing actually some puddling in this general area. So we actually tried to do some pavement shimming first to help to shed that off to the sides, but actually just moved our puddle a little further up. The IVW continued to feed water, which eventually spilled to these smaller isolated wetlands, and then actually spilled across the parking lot towards our rain garden and infiltration basin. So that basin stayed full of water continually, and we had a puddle on our new driveway and a continuous stream of water. So it created some really potential icy conditions once winter really got cold. Luckily, we didn't have any icing just because the weather hung out for us and was a little bit warmer. So it worked. So what we had asked for the emergency work was to create a channel here in between the isolated wetlands and the BVW, essentially doing what was happening across our driveway anyway, just providing some relief out of that the isolated wetlands, which was successful at first, drained it down. We've removed the puddle, we've removed the hazard. Because we were anxious to get it going, the contractor arrived and started moving the boulders. It was very difficult work, as Steve said, to get in there. So the erosion control component was tricky to get in there. Since then, we've gone in, as Steve said, put in the tackifier down and some wattles down, which I can share photos of. Actually, I'll show you where our puddles was. This, so on this side is the isolated wetlands. You can see the water, the puddle in the middle of the picture. And you can kind of make it out here on the side. You can see the wetland is full of water. You can see the reflections. And that's what's feeding this puddle. Continues around to the smaller one, and you can kind of see the edge here. And that outflows to my next picture. This is that smaller isolated wetland, and this is the flow across the parking lot. So these two puddles were our problem that were there. Next photo is the completed trench. One section of the completed trench. This is actually looking up at, this is the isolated wetland area at the top. Flow is this way into the picture. So you can see we tried to, the intent was really working around the boulders, but also to make this naturalized at the end of the day. A lot of this was old fill There was a path going across this at one point in time, sort of informal path, but you could clearly see there were piles of leaves and whatnot that had been filled here over time. So we'd excavated that out to make the connection across. Here's another, a little bit further down, you can see the wattles. We've spread the blue as the tackifier on the banks to hold the soil in place until the spring when we can get some growth and some seed planted. And here's a view again, looking across the path. The isolated wetland is on this side. Flow is going this way. And this is our tackifier and the wattles that were added. So it seems to have been successful in solving the problem somewhat. We are getting some backflow from this into our rain garden. So we're still studying that a little bit on how to remedy that. So as we look at the plan, the water is now flowing through our new channel. But given the grades here are all very flat, we're seeing some water sort of come back into our rain garden, which is making it difficult for that to drain. Over the summer, of course, we had a drought. We didn't have this water here. Everything seemed in the dry. We did do soil tests in our infiltration basin. We saw no signs of groundwater. So this really, to me, seems like a surface water problem that we're working out. But again, we're going to take a closer look at the infiltration basin and long-term functionality of that. However, our immediate request for the emergency work and the reason for this amended order is the swale, which is in. And we'll spread some seed and whatnot in the spring when it's appropriate to do so. I think I'm jumping around my head a little bit, but I think that addresses what we're hoping to cover. I'm happy to answer more questions and go into more detail as we go on.
It's interesting. Thank you. Did you call it tackifier? What is that? Is it?
Yes, tackifier. So it's kind of a substance that will hold the seed and the soil particles on the ground. So the seed starts to germinate. You can buy it separate from the seed. So without seed, we just got the tackifier, so it'll hold the soil in place. So when it rains, the raindrops don't dislodge the initial soil and cause that erosion. Sort of the first line of protection, if you will.
So it doesn't have to be completely coated, even though it's.
No, and that material, from what I understand, tends to spread out as it's placed. So they have a little bit more on site. We can sort of supplement areas if it's still bare, but I think it needs to get a little bit saturated, and then we'll spread a little more on its own. I think that was a picture right away after the spread.
They call it activation with addition of water, basically. So it's activated once you drop some water on it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Can you wait, Peggy, until all of
sure.
the applicant speakers have spoken? Thank you.
Yep.
Just write it down.
Okay.
Mr. Bernstein, did you have anything to add? Or Mr. Ivas?
Not at this time.
Mr. Bernstein?
Not at this time.
Okay. Peggy, sorry. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
Nope. The channel itself, I thought was kind of small. Why isn't it deeper or wider? Were there any constrictions or?
The biggest issue was sort of getting in there, right? You saw the big boulders on the side, and I can bring that up again if you want to look at them. So it was really, it was kind of challenging to move all around and open that up. We also wanted to limit the disturbance as much as we could. We didn't want to open up a 8-foot wide sluice coming through here. It was meant to be sort of a relief valve to let this drain while maintaining the upper wetland system, right? We didn't want to fully drain that because that would be an impact to that wetland system. So we wanted to lower it enough so it stopped going over the that were upstream.
You broke up. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. We didn't want to make it too wide so as not to drain the full upper wetland. So we kept it a little narrow just to provide relief going over the pavement up above.
And how did you choose the point at which you picked it? Was it engineered that way? I was just curious as to.
We
why
actually
they-
picked sort of the shortest connection between 2 points, between the 2 wetland systems. And it was that was about the lowest area there. So it's, again, trying to get the least amount of work between the 2 in that area, in that buffer zone.
With global warming, we'll probably see more water. Is there some permanent solution that is suggested?
Well, I think this solution is permanent in our minds, and I think it's working. If more rainwater comes through, now that the channel is there, the water will flow continuously as it comes in. What we were dealing with was that whole isolated wetland had filled up, so we had to get it to drain and allow it to drain. But now that's there, I think it'll have a constant relief valve. So hopefully, we're hopeful that we won't see that issue continue.
Will it be maintained on a permanent basis?
Yes, I think that's the intent. Obviously, no more putting leaves and debris there for starters. And second, make sure it's clear now that they're aware of it. Obviously, the museum have a maintenance staff person who's there. The person may change over time, so hopefully nothing gets lost in time. But for now, they're aware of the need for this to keep it clear of debris or sticks or anything else.
Are there any plans to regrade the portions of the driveway that are getting flooded? To raise them or grade them differently?
We're looking into that. Obviously, resources are a little tight with the museum. I think in a perfect world with a larger budget available, we would have probably raised that whole road up 18 inches all the way back, but there's only so many resources the museum could come up with. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
Laura, do you have any questions? Dr. Shave, could you just review your report, please?
Yes, so as was discussed, I was out at the site in December when the flooding was happening, and there was the request for the emergency certification to do the excavation work and to remove the fill and debris from between the 2 wetlands. So I did issue that emergency certification with several special conditions, including a special condition that temporary erosion and sedimentation controls be implemented until the site is permanently stabilized with vegetative cover. So again, when the request for the amended order was filed, I did a follow-up site visit to confirm that the trench had been excavated, but the site had not been stabilized. So I did issue that enforcement order, really to reiterate that special condition from the emergency order that that excavation did need to be stabilized and sedimentation prevented in some way until it can be more permanently stabilized with vegetation, which we know won't be until spring. So in the meantime, the past week or so, it looks like they have installed the wattles. You saw the wattles perpendicular, which sort of serve as check dams for the sedimentation, that if any sediment is getting washed, it'll hit those wattles and hopefully not reach the BVW. And then the tackifier, I think with our current weather, probably is the best stabilization we're going to get until they can add the seed in the spring. So based on that, I would recommend that the commission ratify my enforcement order just for good housekeeping and to reiterate that the work does need to be kept stable between now and until permanent vegetative cover is established. So we will assume that we will need updates going into the spring and summer when we expect that they will be able to seed and permanently stabilize that work. And then in terms of approving and issuing an amended order of conditions, My recommendation at this time, as you recall, this went through a whole review process for all of the pavement remilling, installing the stormwater, the rain garden. And as part of that, there was a stormwater report and an O&M plan for the rain garden. So my recommendation is that because this swale or trench has been installed and it sounds like it's enough of a solution that it's going to be kept as a permanent stormwater structure, I think prior to issuing an amended order of conditions, the commission should receive a revised stormwater report because we can assume by installing that swale, we have changed the drainage pattern on the site, which was the intent, but I think the commission needs to have on record a stormwater report that reflects what has been done to the drainage as a result of this work, and also to follow up because there is, again, questions about the current grading of the pavement. Is the rain garden functioning? So hopefully by updating the stormwater report, the engineers can take a look and see if there's any more conclusions we can come to, because ultimately we want the overall system to be functioning so that we're not continuing to do emergency work like this. Ideally, we want to have a whole design here that is functioning, and if that includes the swale, then that can be included in the revised design. And then, as was already mentioned, as part of the stormwater report, there is an operations and maintenance plan. And so now we have the swale is essentially an additional stormwater structure that will need to be maintained. And so it should be reflected in the operations and maintenance plan so that the museum and anyone going forward has an official document seeing what maintenance will be needed to keep that swale functioning and keeping it compliant with the Mass DEP stormwater standards, because again, in the end, this entire design needs to be compliant with the standards. So I think the commission, it would be prudent to take a look at the design again with this swale added, with the amended operations and maintenance plan to include the swale. The commission will need to send it out to Beta Group again to take a look, but I think that would be the most prudent way to make sure that the design as a whole is still compliant with the stormwater standards. And in doing that, we can also be sure that it's compliant with the Wetlands Protection Act, because the swale does essentially connect to wetland resource areas. So if it's not compliant with the stormwater standards, then we can't be sure that the water that it's conveying is also compliant with the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think the most prudent way to go forward is to have a revised stormwater design and report that incorporates what's been done here with the swale, assuming that the swale, it looks like, is going to be kept at its current size, current location. So we should be able to move forward incorporating it into the approved design.
And you'll be investigating the rain garden as well, right? To determine if anything needs to be done there?
Yes, mostly from a sense of overflow and make sure that we're not sort of backfeeding from there. And if I could add, if I could add one thing from that comment. So the water coming from the isolated wetlands across the parking lot was not anticipated. If you look at the survey, what we had, the ground surface, it actually had the wetlands flowing in the direction of this path anyway. So on that one piece of the drainage report, I don't expect that to change. It's really not water we were expecting to have coming over there. So, however, I agree with the other sentiment of let's include this, the swale and whatnot there. So we'll address all of that together in the stormwater. I wouldn't expect to see a change in our rain garden sizing because of this change.
Would an additional rain garden in a different place help at all? Would that?
I guess we'd have to take a look. There's the small isolated wetlands inside the driveway, perhaps enlarging that or providing some more control on that piece may be a benefit, but we're going to take a look at it holistically and see what's the best solution. Now that we know
Great.
that this isolated wetland overflows like this.
Good. Good. Commissioners, any questions, any additional questions or anything? Applicants, any questions, comments? Okay, motion to ratify Megan's enforcement order. The first motion,
I make a motion to ratify the first enforcement order for 455 Oak Street.
second, Peggy? You're muted.
I second.
Okay, so a motion has been made and second to ratify the enforcement order for 455 Oak Street for stabilization of the bank, et cetera. And I assume, I hope, gentlemen, you'd be able to come back for the February 15th meeting with additional plans, or would you need more time than that?
If I could, I'd like to keep the spot there. We're working on getting some more survey data and we don't have a schedule back from them yet. So assuming they can get us in and we can analyze it before then. But if not, we will request a continuance from that with appropriate time.
Okay, fine. So I need a motion, please, to continue the February 15th meeting.
Make a motion to continue 455 Oak Street to the February 15th meeting.
Second.
So the motion has been made and seconded to continue the request for amended order of conditions for 455 Oak Street. It has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Secret, aye.
Curtis, I.
Voris, aye. The motion passes, and we will see you next month.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Well,
Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Night.
It's a wonderful museum, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's the end of our agenda. I do believe.
Are the meeting minutes from December posted?
I think I saw a copy of one, but I'm not sure they were complete. So I didn't have time to really read them. I don't know if you did. I think it
did.
actually said agenda. I think it was actually labeled as an agenda item. And when I clicked on it, I think it was some minutes, but it was a little confusing. So I
Hmm.
thought we made, yeah. So we'll keep an eye out for those minutes, okay?
Yeah, because I looked at the
Um,
past meetings and I see December 7th, which says the November 16th, 22 meeting.
Yeah, it
And
is
I
really
see
helpful if we, I'm sorry, go ahead.
December 21st, 22 meeting.
Mm. It is helpful to have the minutes to go over what was it that we talked about a whole month ago anyway. It really
Yeah.
is very, very helpful to have the minutes done prior to the next meeting, if that's at all possible. I know it's difficult with all the work that you have to do.
Who is our
But if-
secretary?
Oh, both, I think Rhoda and Isaiah, right? Are doing minutes, is that correct? Or I'm not sure exactly how that work is delegated.
That would
Mr.
be
Ray?
Isaiah.
Isaiah?
Isaiah, but we're working on something to make it go faster.
Okay.
Whatever you can do. I mean, I'm sure it's hard for many boards to keep minutes updated, but it's really helpful when you're on the commission to be able to review and really see the the conversations that were held. It's appreciated. Okay. Okay.
Commission members, before you adjourn, I did send you emails of invitations to the 27th at noon. A little something for Megan. I
Can I
hope you
do
guys
it?
can make
Can
it.
I do it by Zoom? Because I'm going to be in Florida.
Mhm.
I'm on my way
Oh.
down now. I'm actually in DC at my daughter's house, and then we're headed to Florida. Or Megan, maybe I could just take you out for a glass of wine after I get back. All the commissioners
That'll
could
work.
come. Rob, you could come too.
That'll work.
And Isaiah. And Rode. You could come to my house. I would love to
Is there
go,
a
but I will
motion
be
to
there in
adjourn?
heart. I will be there in spirit because very truly, Rob. I think I first met Megan when she came to talk to kids that I was working with the
Oh,
Envirothon
at the
at Brockton
school,
High.
at the Virathon,
At
yeah.
Envirothon, yeah. And we were all blown away. It was like, wow, what a smart lady. And she really, really, I'm serious. There were many students that were just, a lot of them ended up, really showing interest in environmental science after that. So
Oh, wonderful.
she's a great role model for women in the
Women
environment
in science.
and women in the environment, right? Yep. Gonna miss you terribly, Meg.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for your commitment to the Conservation Commission. I mean, we have a strong commission and we run a tight ship, as Rob said.
What do you?
Well, thank you.
We will
Rhoda and
miss
I say it.
you. Mhm,
Oh, really? You don't know. You have no idea.
mhm.
Okay.
Rob, it may
we're-
seem like hand holding. Yeah, it is hand holding.
That is hand-holding.
Right? But when you're, out on a precipice because you really don't have as much experience as would be likely, would be lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a
Okay.
lovely evening. Was there a motion to adjourn? Did I hear that?
Not yet. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting this evening.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Be clear, aye.
Curtis, I.
And Vora's aye. Thank you, Megan.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Have a
Miss
wonderful
you,
night.
Megan. Good luck.
Okay, thanks a lot,
Thank
Rob,
you.
too, for
Bye.
taking part.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.